Hi again, everybody. Welcome to Step 2, Bootcamp 2025. And we are excited. We are jumping into copywriting and headline writing today. And this is the next step. You should have completed Step 1, which was your interviewing and finding your story angle. Now we're in Step 2. We're going to talk about what do you do with that interview? How do you compose it into a story and find a good headline for it?
Now, at the end of each activity, we're going to take a moment to do a little debrief section. And first of all, the time that you need to do this step is really up to you. It could be 20 minutes, it could be an hour, it could be longer. You just need to kind of figure out what is working best. Some problems you may have encountered along the way. Maybe your person wasn't saying much. Now that may be because you don't have enough good questions or you didn't really hit on something they were interested in. I always suggest starting with questions, and Sabrina mentioned some of these. What do you do in your spare time? What are you passionate about? I call these the big four. Another one is, what do you know about yourself that nobody else knows that you want to tell them? Mm-hmm. And then the fourth one, which is a little difficult at times, but what have you overcome? And usually with questions like that, you're going to open up a vein that you can move forward into. You might get through this step and need a time for everyone to re-interview. And I strongly suggest that you do some of this debrief as a class. Mm-hmm. So an editor can stand up front, the advisor can help. And what did you find out? Tell me what your angle is. And so you're going to have some dialogue to get a little bit of classroom energy about how everybody else is doing, what worked well for them, and what you might use to help you do better in the process. We don't want anybody frustrated. We want everybody to get to this point and go, I think I've got something here.
Yeah, and there's storytelling so important in yearbooks. There is a variety of different ways to tell a story, but we want to talk about the traditional story format today and what that process was like for me writing the story after doing my interview with Jim and his cycling.
It's a journalistic approach to copywriting. We're going to give you a little bit of a formula, and those of you that have done this before, there are some variations you can bring to it, but there is a basic formula that we want to teach you, and this is that kind of story we want you to do. So let's go.
And you might want to pause at this point and watch the storytelling training video that we have on good journalistic copywriting and the formula for great copywriting. But today we're going to talk about a little bit of our process of writing the story after our interview. And really the biggest thing here is once you've got your interview and you've got your transcribed interview, you already came up with what you think is going to be your story angle. One of the first things I did here was I took that interview and I pulled all the quotes out that had anything to do with the angle of the story that I was going for. Like I took some stuff that I was like, and remember the two angles that I identified were Jim's unfinished business, because he had done this race before, and the last time he did it, he wasn't able to finish it because he got sick. And so he was in there knowing like, I want to finish this. And I thought that was really interesting. And then all the people that he met along the way, the relationships that he builds when he's doing these rides. And so I took any quotes that I could find from the interview that supported those angles, and I kind of copy and pasted them into another document. And I just kind of let them sit in order and just kind of saw, like, do they start to tell a story before I've even written a thing? Are these quotes actually already starting to tell a story for me? And they were. But that first part of the process helped lay the format for my story. Now, once I got all the quotes kind of arranged, I went back and started thinking of a lead. And a lead is like that hook. It's that first couple sentences of the story. Like, how am I going to introduce this topic and make people want to read it too? Like, also make them a little curious. Like, we really want to like hook people into what is the story about and what is happening here. And I knew that's why finding your story angle is so important, because I knew I wanted to play with this idea of this unfinished business that Jim had in wanting to finish this race. And so I went back and started looking for any little nuggets of info that might help me write a good lead. And I'll tell you, I probably wrote 3 or 4 different ones. So I started playing with some of the quotes and information about his relationships. And then finally, after I played with it for a while, I came up with a lead that kind of led into the unfinished business angle. But it took a little playtime. It took a little experimenting and trying some different things before I really landed on the right lead for the story. But really, it was about getting the quotes in order, figuring out what quotes I wanted to use. And then I will say, as I started writing and I started adding in transitions and really trying to connect the quotes together so that they really told a story, there were times I had to go back and pull different pieces of information from different parts of the interview that, like, actually, I remember him saying something about this. And I would go and search in the interview for that word and find that part that he said, and I'd bring that into one of my transitions. And sometimes they kind of ended up out of order because our conversation jumped around a little bit in the interview. So, and that's okay. Like, I was able to pull something from the end of the interview and kind of put it more towards the front of my story. It's not a transcription of your interview. It's a story, and you are the storyteller.
Yeah. And very generally, you start with that lead to pique the reader's interest. Then it's followed by one of your quotes that sort of falls off of that lead. Then you have transitional material where you add lots of specific detail, another quote, transition, etc. Again, more detail on some of those videos and other resources that we have. But there is sort of a roadmap of how to put it all together, which, especially with those of you who are brand new, this will help you put something together right from the start in a really solid format and fashion.
And I will say, as I was writing too, one of the things that one old habit I used to have was, if I didn't know something, but I knew I could find it out, I would just put question marks in there. I was like, and so there was pockets of the story where I was like, I'm kind of in a writing mode. Like, I don't want to stop and like try to figure this out. I'll just like put X amount of miles, question mark, like how many miles he trained before riding the race, and what kind of bike he rode, and some other things that were things I missed asking in the actual interview, but I knew I could go back and easily get. But I wasn't going to stop my story writing to go find that stuff out. I was just going to fill in the blanks later, and which I did. I went back to Jim and he gave me all that information I needed to complete the story. And then as you're going down that story writing formula, and you'll see the story really matches that transition quote format, the ending of the story should feel like a natural end. It's really not a in conclusion 3.5 essay type of ending. It's just because that's not how we would wrap up a conversation. If I was telling you a story, I wouldn't in conclusion and give you a summary of everything we talked about. You would just find that natural close to the story. And you can kind of see how at the end of the story, kind of bring it back, kind of circle kick it back to the lead again about the unfinished business. And it ends with a really strong quote from Jim. So find that natural end and really go back and then reread it. Read it out loud. Have a friend read it and read through it and make sure it all makes sense and it flows together so that you have a really great story. And then comes the fun part. What's the headline going to be? And this is where I think get everybody involved. Like, talk it out. Like, have conversations, or go back to your story. And are there any specific phrases, parts of quotes, things that came out in the interview that really kind of encapsulate the story? And then that becomes your headline. That makes it super easy. But if you're stuck, go to the masses, throw the story angle out there for everybody and see if they can come up with something fun and engaging that matches the tone and vibe of the story itself.
And would this also be a good time to write your subhead?
So after step 1, you did your interview, you found your story angle. Now step 2, we want you to write that story. It might be messy. That's okay. It's not going to be written right the first time. Sometimes even start writing the story and then go back and write a lead if you need to. But just try it. Just get started. And once you get started, you'll see it starts to flow.